Today I want to do something a little different. This is going to be the first episode in a series that I've been wanting to start for a while here on the channel. A series in which I talk about ways that Pokémon GO can be improved. Obviously, it's a great game. It's easily the most popular game of the year, and I'm having a lot of fun playing it. But let's face it, there are some things that Niantic just didn't get right. The first thing I want to talk about is a problem that should be glaringly obvious to anyone who's ever played the main series Pokémon games. In those games, Pokémon like Gengar and Alakazam were offensive powerhouses. They were go-to choices whenever you needed a strong attacker. But in Pokémon GO, they have horribly low CP totals, and they get overshadowed by Pokémon like Snorlax, Lapras, Vaporeon, who were all intended to be more defensive Pokémon. The problem here lies with the way Niantic incorporated Pokémon's base stats from the original games into Pokémon GO. So I guess today's tip isn't so much for you guys as it is for Niantic. Under no circumstances should a Jolteon with higher CP be losing to a Vaporeon. In the main series Pokemon games, Jolteon and Vaporeon have the same stat totals, meaning they're meant to be Pokemon with similar power. On top of that, Jolteon is an electric-type Pokemon with 2 electric-type moves which deal super effective damage to Vaporeon and benefit from stab, meaning they deal over 50% extra damage. So why then do I lose to a Vaporeon who's attacking at a much slower rate than I am and dealing much lower damage per second? The reason is because Jolteon's power comes from its speed stat. It has one of the highest base speed stats of any Pokemon in first generation. But in Pokemon GO, a Pokemon's speed stat means nothing. In Pokemon GO, a Pokemon's base speed stat contributes to both its attack and defense, but at a much lower rate than either its attack, defense, special attack, or special defense stats. In Pokemon GO, the formula for base attack is 2 times attack to the half power times special attack to the half power plus speed to the half power. So if a Pokemon had an average base stat of 70 for each of those 3 stats, you can see that speed actually contributes only about 10% of what its attack and special attack stats contribute. Defense works the same way, only with its defense and special defense stats, obviously. So in total, speed is contributing very little to a Pokemon's overall power compared to its attack and defense stats. The easiest fix is to just treat speed the same way that attack and defense stats are treated. Make it a multiplier rather than an additive bonus, so that it actually contributes an equal amount to a Pokemon's overall attack or defense stats. But that's the boring way to do it. Because of the way combat works in Pokemon GO, there's a unique opportunity to give Pokemon with high speed stats other types of advantages in battle. In the main series Pokemon games, the battle system was turn-based, so speed only determined who was going to attack first. In Pokemon GO, we have a real-time action battle system, so speed can do so much more. In Pokemon GO, every action in a battle takes a certain amount of time to perform. If Pokemon with higher speed stats could perform those actions faster, they could get both an offensive and defensive boost without having to rework their stats. The first step is to give each Pokemon a speed modifier in addition to their base stats, and to do that, you need to compare each Pokemon's speed to the average speed. The average base speed stat of all first generation Pokemon is 68.8, but I'm going to round it up to 70 to have a nice clean number. Now you can compare each Pokemon's individual base speed stat to the average to find out who's above average and who's below average. Pokemon with above average speed will perform their actions faster. Pokemon with below average speed will perform their actions slower. It's simple. Now for the actual speed modifier, I would take the Pokemon's speed stat, divide it by the average speed, 70, and take the square root of the result. That is the speed modifier that will affect each Pokemon's actions in battle. To give you an example of how it works, let's look at 2 Pokemon who can learn the same move. Exeggutor and Alakazam both learn Confusion. Considering that Exeggutor's attack stat is higher than Alakazam's in Pokemon GO, a Pokemon with average defense, 146, Exeggutor deals 15 damage for each use of Confusion, while Alakazam deals 12 damage. With Confusion's standard animation time of 1.51 seconds, Exeggutor deals 9.9 damage per second with Confusion, while Alakazam only deals 7.9 damage per second. But if you were to create a speed modifier for each of those Pokemon and apply it to that animation time, Exeggutor would now deal 8.8 damage per second with Confusion, while Alakazam deals 10.4. So what we see here is that Alakazam's attack and speed stats combine so that it outdamages Exeggutor. And that's fair because Exeggutor is meant to be a little bit more defensive than Alakazam. It has higher HP and defense stats, whereas Alakazam is meant to be a glass cannon. It's supposed to attack fast and deal a lot of damage, but if it takes a hit, it'll faint quickly. To give you a better idea of how a speed modifier would change the overall power rankings in Pokemon GO, I decided to do some math. I took Professor Kukui's spreadsheet that ranks Pokemon based on their movesets and their offensive and defensive abilities, and I incorporated my speed modifier to see how things would change. If you're unfamiliar with this spreadsheet, I have a full video explaining it. Essentially what it does is rank each Pokemon based on their theoretical damage output for each of their movesets. The spreadsheet calculates each Pokemon's damage output over 100 seconds, and then multiplies it with its stats to come up with these rankings. The damage columns, no weave, and weave damage tell you how much damage that Pokemon would deal over 100 seconds if it was either spamming its fast attack or alternating its fast and charge attack as often as possible. From there, the spreadsheet calculates the Pokemon's gym offense ranking by taking its damage output and multiplying it by its attack stat. It also calculates tankiness, which is a measure of its defensive capabilities. That's calculated by multiplying its HP with its defense. And the final ranking I'm looking at is dual ability, which is calculated by multiplying tankiness by gym offense. And this gives you an idea of a Pokemon's overall strength. It takes into account both its damage output and its tankiness, the amount of damage that it can take. So this is a good measure of how a Pokemon would perform if you were just using your attacks and never dodging. Each Pokemon has up to 6 possible movesets, but for the sake of brevity, I'm only looking at their best possible moveset. That's the moveset that deals the most damage per second. Now on the Showing Work tab, where all the calculations are actually done, I've added a few columns. The first is speed. This is each Pokemon's base speed stat from the original main series Pokemon games. The second column is speed modifier, and this is the modifier that I've created. It's calculated by taking the square root of the Pokemon's speed stat divided by the average speed stat, 70. So you can see here for Venusaur, which has a base speed stat of 80, it's above average, so its speed modifier is 1.069. For Butterfree, which has 70 speed, that's exactly average, its speed modifier is 1, it doesn't change. And for Sandslash, which is below average slightly, its speed modifier is also slightly below average. Scrolling over, I've made some adjustments to the speed of each Pokemon's attack animation. Here is the original speed of the attack, and this is the column I've added, which is adjusted speed. This is the attack animation speed multiplied by the Pokemon's speed modifier. So you'll see here for Venusaur, which has a slightly above average attack speed, Vine Whip originally takes 650 milliseconds to complete. With its speed modifier, it takes slightly less time, 608 milliseconds, so it will actually complete the animation faster. Again, Butterfree's is exactly the same, and Sandslash, which has below average speed, now takes slightly longer to complete the animation for its attack. I've done the same thing here for charge attacks, where I've taken the original speed of the attack and calculated the adjusted speed with the speed modifier. With those adjusted speeds to their attack animations, I've calculated their new damage output over 100 seconds. Here's the adjusted no weave damage, that's just spamming the fast attack. And for weave damage, I forgot to make a new column, but this is adjusted. This is the Pokemon's weave damage if it's using the fast attack and the charge attack as often as it's possible. Going back, I've calculated each Pokemon's new gym offense and dual ability rankings by using the new adjusted damage. So if we go back to the first tab, this is the stats as they are in the game currently, and we sort by dual ability. You can see this is the standard tier list right now. Snorlax, Dragonite, Lapras, Vaporeon, Arcanine, Exeggutor. These are the top Pokemon, the Pokemon you always see in gyms. These are the strongest Pokemon in the game currently. Now if we sort the updated spreadsheet by dual ability, the list looks pretty similar. Dragonite, Vaporeon, Lapras, Arcanine, they're all still at the top. But remember, dual ability ranks a Pokemon based on both its offensive and defensive abilities. Since we're not changing the defensive stats on any of these Pokemon, dual ability is still going to favor Pokemon with high stats overall, Pokemon with good attack and defense stats. Now if we go back and sort by gym offense, you can see the strongest attackers in the game currently. Dragonite, Arcanine, Exeggutor, Charizard, Flareon, Victreebel. These are Pokemon that deal the most damage per second. And you can see that traditional attackers like Gengar and Alakazam are all pretty far down the list. Now, when we go sort the updated spreadsheet by gym offense, the list looks pretty different. Dragonite and Arcanine are still at the top, but Gengar, Alakazam, Raichu, and Jolteon have all moved up considerably. These are Pokemon who relied on their speed in the original games, and now that their speed actually counts for something in Pokemon GO, they move way up in the offensive rankings. A lot of other fast Pokemon benefit from this change as well. Pidgeot and Rapidash have both moved up the list, and slower Pokemon like Exeggutor moved down the list considerably. Snorlax takes a big hit, moving all the way down to almost the bottom of the list. He wasn't a great attacker to begin with, but because he has such a low speed stat, he now deals a lot less damage offensively. Some Pokemon are still held back by their poor movesets, but that's an issue I'm going to address in an upcoming episode in this series. Now if you want to buff these fast Pokemon defensively, make the speed modifier apply to dodging as well. Currently, dodging reduces damage by a flat 75%. Without changing the way dodging works, you can just take a version of the speed modifier and apply it to that 75% reduction so that faster Pokemon will take less damage with a successful dodge. With 75% as the baseline, a simple formula would be speed modifier to the half power times 0.75, and this gives you the new damage reduction for each Pokemon based on its speed. Alakazam, as one of the fastest Pokemon, would reduce damage by 85% with a successful dodge, while Snorlax, one of the slowest Pokemon, would reduce damage by 60% with a successful dodge. Flavorfully, it makes perfect sense. With Alakazam being able to move faster, it can avoid more of the damage. The reason I advocate this type of change rather than a simple change to the stat formula is because this will start to create different identities for different types of Pokemon, and that's something that's really important to prevent the game from getting stale. If you're like me and you try to dodge every attack in battle, you'll want to use a Pokemon like Alakazam with a higher risk-reward ratio. Being able to execute your dodges well will benefit you greatly when using these types of Pokemon, but if you mess up and miss a dodge, you take a lot more damage because they have lower defense stats. On the other hand, there are people who never dodge in battle, and they'll want to use Pokemon with higher dual ability rankings. Pokemon like Vaporeon and Lapras who have good all-around stats. They can deal decent amounts of damage while taking a ton of damage themselves. They might not put damage out as fast as Alakazam or Gengar, but because they have the high defensive stats to back it up, they can sit there and soak up the damage while they're attacking. During the E3 panel before Pokemon GO's release, Niantic said that one of their goals was to preserve the personalities of Pokemon, and the example they gave was that Abra would flee early on in encounters, just like it did in the main series games. But when it comes to battling, they seem to have neglected Pokemon's personalities altogether. In the original games, every Pokemon had a function, whether they were a sweeper, someone who's meant to come in and deal a ton of damage as fast as possible before they faint, or a tank, someone who's meant to soak up damage and stall for time. Each Pokemon had a personality and a function that isn't preserved in Pokemon GO. Implementing a speed modifier would be a great first step towards creating some diversity in gameplay and giving these Pokemon some of their personality back. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know it's a little different from what you're used to here on the channel, but I want to start making these kinds of videos for two reasons. The first is that I really just like talking about game design, and the second is I want Pokemon GO to continue to succeed. Obviously, the better the game does, the better this channel does, but beyond that, this game really represents something that I've been dreaming of my entire life. A real-life Pokemon adventure is something I've wanted to happen since my childhood. So I really want this game to just be the best that it can possibly be. Obviously, I don't work for Niantic, and me just saying these things isn't going to make them a reality. But we do know that Niantic is listening to us at... Is that a Jolteon?
Oh my god. Sorry, I
1320?
I keep disturbing you.
Ay. Alright. Real quick.
I'm sorry.
And 2 little Nidorans. That's cool.
What's your CP? 89. I got 1320.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny that I used Jolteon as an example earlier today, and here we are catching one in the parking lot. Niantic, are you listening to me? Let's appraise it. How's Thunder? Pretty decent. It has a good moveset. But anyway, like I was saying, Niantic is listening to us as a community, and they are responding and giving us the things that we're asking for. So if we continue to be vocal about what we want from this game, there's a good chance that in the future, some of these things could get incorporated. You know what? I'm going to name this Jolteon Speed Modifier. Oh, it doesn't fit. How about Speed Mod? Boom. There he is. 10% base capture rate on Pidgeot, and with 1031 CP, this one's going to be pretty high leveled. So that's a very red circle. And like I said earlier, it's hard to approximate the exact number, but you can get a decent estimate if you look at these colors. So dark red, obviously, is going to be the closest to 0%. This kind of orange is closer to 25%. Yellow is about 50%,